Hey, welcome everybody to Hope for Our Times on Wednesday. And man, this is exciting. Starting to do live every day almost. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tomorrow I have Olivier Melnick on. And today you guys can already see who my guest is. I'm going to bring him on in just a second. And but before I do that, just want to remind you, hey, download the app, the Hope for Our Times app. It's in the App Store, whether you have Droid or Apple. There it is. You can see what it looks like, and it's free. So kind of cool. So download the app. It's free. We have news. We have the Bible. We have these videos. All these things are going on there. I will be live this Sunday evening. We're going to be beginning with the book of Obadiah. And so it's going to be a great time. And also, don't forget to like and share this video, too. You're definitely going to want to share this. And I appreciate the likes. If you guys would hit the like button, that really helps us out, especially in a world where Google wants to censor us. So let's welcome John Haller. John, thanks for joining again. Twice in 1 week. I think you're the first person I've had on twice in 1 week.
Uh-oh. Well, we'll see if that continues.
Oh, it's going to be good. You know what? There's so many people I want to get on. I feel like I should do these like 5 days a week. And but this is great. So listen to this, John. This is really cool. I know you experience it all the time too, but I just took a snapshot of some of the comments. So people watching from Louisville, Kentucky, New Zealand, Chapin, South Carolina, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Utica, Kentucky, from Protovogie, Northern Ireland, Australia, UK. Somebody on here said it's good to see people watching from all over the world. And there are tons of people from all over the place, all over.
So, it is an amazing thing, isn't it?
It really is amazing. You sit here and you think, okay, we're in Midwest. I'm on upper Midwest. I'm in the West Coast. And people are watching from all over the world, whatever their time zone is. Some will watch later, some are live. It's truly amazing. As much as we know technology is going to be used for bad stuff by Antichrist right now, this is great.
Just a couple quick comments on that. 5 years ago, we were in Jerusalem during Yom Yerushalayim period. Trump was the Trump visit and everything. It was the 50th anniversary of the 6-Day War. So it's a great time. More people in Jerusalem on Jerusalem Day than had ever been in Jerusalem in one day before. And we were down by the Friends of Zion Museum, and Pam was buying tickets so we could go in, and all of a sudden I heard these British guys yelling my name. Huh. And this is in downtown Jerusalem, and it's like...
That's funny.
These guys recognized me from YouTube. And then one time we were at a local restaurant that we don't go to that often, and one of the waitresses came up and she said, "I just want you to know I watch you every Sunday when I get home from work." And I thought, I'm a guy, so I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, And then my wife, she has the way of kind of reeling me back into reality. She goes, "You know what this means? It means you can never leave a bad tip again."
Oh, that's great.
Gotta love her,
Oh, and she's right. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Hey, we're going to be talking about Antichrist, Mohammed bin Salman, the Temple Mount, the temple, the deal that is eventually going to come. Jared Kushner. There's a lot in here. We're also going to be talking about, I want to get to this in just a minute, the Hashemite kingdom, to educate everybody. We're going to get there in just a minute. But first of all, I just want to touch bases on this, and then we'll come back to it when we get to the questions. But there's food crises. We have energy crises. We have Emmanuel Macron says the era of abundance is over. You and I, and pretty much all of our colleagues, said once we hit 2020, we are never going back to normal. And people, you and I talked the other day, 2021, we said, you're going to wish for the good old days of 2020. Same thing with 2022, and Emmanuel Macron just confirmed everything that we've said. So on that, because we got food lines, we have energy, coal lines, what's going on?
Well, this is, I think, the broader scope of this is the next phase of the Great Reset, in my opinion. I think they're implementing their plan the destruction of energy. We can argue whether it was deliberate or not, but it certainly is a consequence of the policies that they put in place to destroy the West, the way the West operates. And so right now, I mean, if you go back to the UK papers the other day, the Financial Times led on their website with this headline: "People are going to die." The Guardian front page, big type, lives will be lost. And because they're expecting, and more people die from cold than other things. So it's always funny because sometimes I talk about these things on Sunday, and then Monday or Tuesday, Tucker Carlson will cover the exact same things.
Watches you.
This is it. I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe I should get a commission. But it's kind of funny because it happens fairly often, and I use this stuff too. So let's be honest about it. But this energy crisis is going to be particularly acute in Europe. So megawatt cost of electricity in the United States is $70 or $80 per megawatt. It's gone up a little bit. In Europe, it was about 3 times that amount. And then about 2 weeks ago, it hit 500. I'm going to use the $550 just so we don't have to do all the currency conversion. $550 a megawatt. But now in France, it's just about 1,000. In Germany, it's about 1,200 per megawatt. And England is supposed to go up at least another 50 to 80%. People can't afford to eat. Now, are the governments going to pay this? Or are they going to provide it for free? But the BBC, Financial Times, The Guardian, all the papers in the UK, the Times of London, were doing these stories about these, mothers with young children. I have to decide whether I'm going to feed my kid or pay my utility bill. I have to, a business person, I can't afford my energy costs. They've increased 10 times what they were a year ago. How do I make a living for that? And so what you have there is you have this spiraling down effect, and more people, statistically, about 5 times more people die from cold in a given year than die from heat. So this is epic. I don't know how to describe what I'm seeing. The picture I saw, I think that Reuters, you can go to Reuters and you can look at the Polish video that they had from Poland of people in 3 mile long lines of cars and trucks to buy coal for the winter, because they mostly use coal over there to heat their homes. And they don't think there's going to be enough coal because Russia's being taken out of the market. And then that has this cascading effect with all these other geopolitical effects that, Russian alliances with Turkey and with Iran and China and India and all this stuff. And Putin talking about developing a new world order. And then he issued a statement just today about Islam is an important part of that new order that we're establishing against the West. So, and then here's a headline in the Wall Street Journal today: Russia confounds the West by recapturing its oil riches. Russia is raking in more revenue than ever with the help of new buyers, new traders, and the world's seemingly insatiable demand for crude. And what they call fossil fuels, carbon-based energy, it's not going away. I was looking at an engineering picture the other night about, I saw your great Governor Gruesome there in California, who said that by 2035, they're going to phase out the purchase of new gas-powered combustion engine cars by 2035. Well. And it's like, they're turning you into Cuba.
Yeah, it's going to go very bad. I'm looking at this stuff. So my electric bill, we bought solar 10 years ago, purchased it. The area I live is desert.
I've been there. I can remember driving into your church parking lot on a Sunday night, and it's 115 or whatever.
It's about 105 or 110 outside right now. But so we purchased solar. We didn't lease it 10 years ago because our electric bill was too high. Well, we just got our electric bill yesterday. It was the highest electric bill we've ever had, and we have solar. So this is welcome to California. So, and also, you know, we know that there's not going to be enough electricity to even run electric cars, but they don't care about that. So it appears to me, you said this is really part two of the Great Reset, because it is. And then also, John, when you look at, you take this Russia-Ukraine war, you know, it's absolutely unbelievable. The leaders in the Western world make the worst possible decisions. Oh yeah, take this, Putin. We're not going to let you give us, we're cutting off you from giving us any oil. What do you say about that? Or whatever. It's just insanity. You know?
Yeah, there was a talk by the head of the EU, von der Leyen, you know, just a few months ago, and she was saying, we know that this will be difficult, but this is what we must do. We are shutting off energy from Russia. Well, but they continue to decommission their nuclear power plants. I just was reading this morning two things about California. I think is it the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant they're trying to decommission? Yeah,
I thought it already was, but I heard you're right. You're correct.
Well, there was one they were going to leave. I think there are two, and there was one they were going to leave, kind of come back online, but then the other one they were going to still decommission it. But then today, so Governor Newsom comes out and says we're going to do all cars electric by 2035. Or at least force everybody that way. But now they're talking about rolling blackouts in California because you don't have enough power to do what you need to do because it's hot.
Yeah, you can't even run your lights in your own house, let alone charge your Tesla. You know?
Yeah, unplug all of your and so the average Tesla will use and charging it over a course of a year. My understanding is it uses something like 4 times the amount of power that you would use in an average year for one car.
One car.
The whole thing, it's insanity. And it does seem like this all fits into the Great Reset. So here you see Polish people lining up for miles to buy coal in August.
Yeah, it's really, you know, watching all of this take place is almost surreal, but we can see it. It's like this, everything's moving rapidly at the same time we're watching this slow motion version of the end of the world as we know it, that is coming about, as we've known it, is coming about. But very biblical. We can see everything developing. We don't know exactly, you know, I can't tell exactly what the next move is going to be, but it's like every day you wake up and you know, you're watching this going, this is just unbelievable. Then I find out today that Europe is actually purchasing, I believe it's purchasing oil from China, which is getting it from Russia. So Europe says, we're not going to get any, did you see that? We're not going to get any of the Russian oil. So Russia sells it to China, makes money. China sells it back to Europe, makes money. And Europe's not going to ask any questions about where their oil comes from because they have to have it. So now everybody's paying more.
It's unbelievable what I see going on. I mean, it's like an outragement, and then you look at what they're doing with schools and the kids and the whole transgender. And Trudeau came out the other day to talk about the Two-Spirit, 2S LGBTQIA plus whatever action plan, because I guess it's a problem. And then Two-Spirit thing comes out of American, I don't even know what the proper term is, American Indian culture, Native American culture, and Canadian, you know, original Canadian native culture, this Two-Spirit idea. And they were trying to push that into the LA schools last year. So it's just, and now they're latching on to transgender stuff. And then we have a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has introduced legislation to protect children. And she's been swatted.
Yeah.
I don't know if people don't know what swatted is. That's where somebody places a call to the police and says, at Marjorie Taylor Greene's house, somebody's being shot or somebody's been shot. There's an active shooter and that type of thing. And the police descend on the place, hoping that and the goal is to have the person, and she has firearms at her house. She's a Second Amendment person. And she says, I usually go to the door with an AK-47 or an AR-15 or whatever. And so for some reason the other night, I just felt like I shouldn't. And I went and there's like 20 cops at my door with guns drawn. And the goal is to get her killed. She's been swatted 3 times in the last week. And people have called in and said, yeah, we're doing this because she's trying to get transgender kids.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And then they will come in and say, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the violent extremist.
Yeah, no, that isn't, and that's the spin.
Yeah, and they will always accuse you of what they are.
Yeah, fascism or whatever. Okay, we're going to go, because all of this, I agree, this looks like part 2 of the Great Reset, or the setup of the beast system, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's get to this beast system and the beast himself. Let's start working through it. So let's go all the way back. Take us through the Hashemite kingdom, and then I want to work up to MBS, Muhammad bin Salman, Jared Kushner, the temple and the Temple Mount. And then, before we're done, before we take questions, I'm going to ask you where you think the temple was. So
okay.
that'll be towards the end, just before we go to questions.
That way people can leave with a bad feeling.
Well, you know what? I've never actually talked to you about that before, and I'm very curious.
I have very strong opinion on that one.
Great.
So listen, we talked the other day about Babylon. So let me just make a clarification here. So I'm not sitting here and driving a stake in the ground that I think that this Neom place that we talked about is Babylon. But one of the things I talk about in connection with the end times is this thing of logistics. So when we look at Ezekiel 38 and 39, it says a great company and a mighty army. So what does that mean? So that doesn't mean it's like 50 Hezbollah guys coming over the border. It means something. And so you have to look at how armies gather. So when we went into the first Gulf War back in the 90s, it took 6 months for the most logistically capable army on the planet to get things into Kuwait and neighboring countries to be able to invade Iraq, Kuwait and Iraq. So when this great invasion comes, I'm saying there's going to be a lead up to it. It's not going to happen overnight. There's a logistical aspect to it, just like there's a logistical aspect to Babylon. So here we see somebody building this great city, which is described by one architectural critic as the new Babylon, and it's a dystopian technology controlled future, which seems to play into a lot of how we feel this beast system is going to play out. So I'm not saying that this is Babylon, but I'm saying is that Babylon would be built. I think some of the scriptures describe it as being in a desert. So some people say it will be where the original Babylon was. And I'm not totally rejecting that. I won't be surprised if that's the case. But I'm also saying that if it has to be this great commercial center and city, then it has to be built up to that. And so we have certain examples of that. We see Neom being built. They hope to do it in 5 to 7 years. We've seen Dubai has come into this great commercial city with all these big buildings, and that's taken 30 years. We see Qatar with all their things, and that's taken 25 or 30 years for those to be built up. So I'm just saying and I don't know that it has to be built up completely, because if we look at the pattern of history, that the original Tower of Babel wasn't finished when God intervened. So I don't think this final Babylon will necessarily be finished when God intervenes either. But there's a logistical aspect to it. So if it has to be rebuilt in Babylon and Iraq, I'm just saying is that there's not much progress that's been made. There's a few things, but people write to me, say, well, there's a University of Babylon there. Okay, well, it's not what the Bible's talking about, the University of Babylon. It's talking about this commercial Babylon city, and it's described as a mystery. And so as the mystery is, where is it? Or is the mystery is, boy, how did it come back? I don't know exactly. I'm not ready to drive a straight stake into the ground on that. So I'm not dissing all my friends who think it's Babylon and Iraq. That's fine. But I'm just saying is that there's a logistical aspect to it. And if it has to be built up, that just means, and it's a final part of these last 7 years, then, you kind of have to build the time in there for all of these things to happen. Absent, it being dropped out of the sky by aliens or something like that. But and I have friends who probably would say that that's the way it's going to happen. So I'm just saying there's a logistical aspect to it. So I'm not saying this is where Babylon is, What I'm just saying is look at all the different things that are going on. And now you have this Mohammed bin Salman. So now let's pivot to a couple of things that we didn't really talk about. So in June, the Wall Street Journal comes out with an article called, "Is Jordan part of this, the way the Palestinian issue gets resolved?" Because, you talked with Bill Koenig yesterday about the Trump peace plan came out in January of 2020, the Abraham Accords, which came out later that year, in the summer, I think. And we don't know exactly how this all fits together yet. I don't think anybody can say this is that which was prophesied, but we see sort of the players being put in place. So I'm just, so here's the Wall Street Journal writing this article all of a sudden out of the blue about Jordan and Palestine and how this might fit together to resolve the peace problem. Then a month later, here comes an article by a close confidant of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, when Trump went to Saudi Arabia in 2017, in May of 2017, he was not the Crown Prince. He became the Crown Prince a month or two later. And then he instituted his sort of purge and taking a lot of billions of dollars from rich people there, including the president of Lebanon, who was kept in custody there for a month or two, and supposedly I hear paid about $6 billion to get out of jail. So Mohammed bin Salman's consolidated his power. So one of his confidants puts an article in Al Arabiya, and this has to be done with his approval. It says, here's a peace proposal. We'll call it the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine. And so it'll be the West Bank area, Gaza, road to connect the South and Northwest Banks, areas from like Hebron up to Ramallah and Nablus. And but there will also be a connection over to Jordan, and Jordan will really be the one that's in charge. Netanyahu's sort of commented on this in an interview with Ben Shapiro at Daily Wire a week or so ago, where he said, well, we'll never agree to it. We have to have security control of everything in the West Bank. And the plan essentially gives certain settlement areas in the area of the West Bank, which more properly called Judea and Samaria, to the Israelis, but it also gives the Israelis control of the Jordan Valley because it's a security issue. They have to control the Jordan Valley. And when you look back, there was a plan about 50 years ago called the Elan Plan, which is very similar. And then when you sort of overlay the Elan Plan with the Trump plan, it looks almost identical. Without the thing that Trump didn't do is build in Jordan. So here's Jordan. And you understand that there's a lot of things that they do over there that are done to make a statement through owning a place. So I told you after we finished, there's this unfinished steel superstructure building, couple 3 stories. As you drive north out of Jerusalem on Route 60 up sort of towards Ramallah and Shiloh and that type of thing. And it sits there and it's unfinished. It's been unfinished since 1967. It was to be the palace of King Hussein of Jordan, the father of the current king, King Abdullah II. But when you look at it biblically, it's built on the tribal homeland, the capital of the tribe of Benjamin, which was where Saul was from, who is the first king of Israel. And so it is making a statement like, I am building my palace on top of where your first king came from. I am supreme and in control. That's what it's saying. It's a very fascinating place. It's one of the highest places, if not the highest place in Jerusalem. It has a view of everything around. And so you need to understand that this is the mindset. So King Hussein or King Abdullah II of Jordan is, he's considered to be the custodian of the Christian and Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. And if you watch, I must have 8 or 9 clips of him speaking at different conferences in places around the world. And he always says, we will protect the Christian and Muslim Islamic holy sites. He never mentions Israel. So that raises an interesting issue is what are they going to do with the Temple Mount in Israel and all of this? And so then there's another story that we need to look at. And Mordecai Kedar, who is one of the smartest people in Israel. He's a professor. Speaks Arabic. He is has a great understanding of Islamic culture, tribal culture. And he came out with a couple articles. I think the first time I saw it was about 2008. And then there was another one in Israeli national news about 2016 and August 11th, 2016. So 6 years ago. And the article says the real Aqsa is not in Jerusalem. And so what he said was, and what he said is exactly true. He goes back and looks at the early history. Did Muhammad come to Jerusalem to make his night journey? And this is why they built the Al-Aqsa Mosque there on the Temple Mount. And that's why they claim it as Islamic territory. But when he goes back and looks at it, it's like there's no Islamic history of it being that. It never really came up until the Jews started coming back into the land. Then all of a sudden, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock is the third holiest site in Islam. That was unknown. In fact, I have a copy, and I'll see it sitting here on my desk. It's a reproduction. I think Randall Price has them at his ministry of a 1924 tourist publication by the Waqf in Jerusalem. I'm sure you've seen it. It's a little booklet. And it was issued by the guy in charge of the Temple Mount, the Hajj Ahmad al-Husseini, who was, a collaborator with Adolf Hitler and everything on getting rid of Jews. But under his control, this was published. And in it says it's unquestionable that this is the site of Solomon's temple.
Yeah. So I have
and they
seen
want to
that.
deny that.
Yeah. What's amazing about that is that came from Hitler's friend.
Yeah, that's the Hajj Ahmad
Hitler's
al-Husseini,
friend actually said that, Hitler's Muslim friend, which is remarkable. Okay, not to sidetrack you. By the way,
fine. It's all kind of fits together.
Okay, I gotta say this before we go any further. Brandon Holthouse told me to tell you hi.
Okay.
It was just before we came on, and he watched the program Monday. He said it was great. And Brandon and I are both going to be speaking in Santa Rosa, The Rock, next week, Friday and Saturday, Calvary Chapel, Santa Rosa. In fact, if anybody wants to go up there, it's going to be fantastic. You can check out the link in the description here for Calvary Chapel, Santa Rosa.
By the way, did I not see that Calvary Chapel, San Jose had a lot of their fines that had been imposed on them reversed? Some of them.
So Mike McClure. Mike's such a great guy. Have you ever met Mike?
No.
Yeah, he said some of them. So these people are so, I mean,
they're lunatics.
He's got Facebook is right down the street. Google's right down the street. Apple's. He's surrounded by them. But, the majority of his church, and this is encouraging, the majority of his church are people who work in the tech industry in the Silicon Valley. That's proof there really are believers that are there. And so everybody.
So we need to pray for them.
We need to pray for them.
To have influence.
Okay.
So anyway, so back to the Temple Mount. So Kedar has this article, and this is supported by Islamic research by some of the Islamic scholars, that there's really no connection between the Muhammad night journey and the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. But now it's a political issue, and now everybody accepts it as true, and it's just not true. And I think you mentioned this the other day, a few years ago, there was an Islamic scholar who tweeted out the exact same thing.
Yeah.
From Saudi Arabia, a Saudi Arabian Islamic scholar. And this was not done without the consent of Mohammed bin Salman. You just don't do that. So I think that was in 2020. So now we have some Islamic people questioning the connection of the Islam to the Temple Mount. Now, I don't see this being changed, and there has to be something happen to get these attitudes to change. But maybe it's a ruler like Mohammed bin Salman who comes to power. Now, his father will never do this. His father is, Palestinian state, the way we want, the Arab peace plan that one of my brothers put out back in 2002 or 4, somewhere around there. That's the way that we're going to resolve this. But now Mohammed bin Salman has come out with his own peace plan. And he's very close to Jared Kushner. And Jared Kushner is the architect of the Trump plan. He's the architect of the Abraham Accords, which seem now to have been adopted by what I call the Biden administration. So it's very interesting, just this sort of synergy that we have with the way these things are developing. I don't know. So I see a guy writing at Aretz Shiva, David Singer, has written 4 or 5 or 6 articles now supporting this Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine plan proposed by Mohammed bin Salman. And this would be great. And he describes himself as a Zionist. Now, listen, I think it's crazy. It gives the watershed to this Arab state. Kadar, by the way, recognizes the tribal nature of the culture, Professor Kadar. And he says he has the 8-state solution, that we ought to treat the Palestinian areas, the Arab areas, because they're all different tribes. Guys from, Nablus, you got guys from Nazareth, and they're all part of different tribes and clans. And that's why they don't get along. So we need to do something like they did in the United Arab Emirates, which are 7 tribal areas that come together and elect one person as the leader. So you have the guy at Abu Dhabi, you have the guy at Dubai, and then you have 5 others. And they sort of have a council, and they select the guy from Abu Dhabi as the president of the United Arab Emirates. And he's just been installed recently. His brother, who was president, died recently. So there's a lot of change going on there. And then you also see the Jordanian Hashemite family. They intermarry with guys in United Arab Emirates, and they intermarry with people in Saudi Arabia, and they do this for political alliances in large part. So you just have this synergy of this Arab world sort of congealing together in a way that seems favorable to Israel. But the concern I have with the Abraham Accords is that there's it's almost this overarching economic component to it. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just saying is that there is this proposal. On the other side of this too, you have a lot of Jews who they want peace. They're tired of this. They're tired of living with this. And they want to get it resolved. And the resolution will divide the land. And you had Bill Koenig on yesterday to talk about what happens then. I remember many years ago, had to be back in the 90s. You can probably, I have the video someplace. Peter Jennings was doing a story on the future of Jerusalem. And he was interviewing, this is around 1995, the time of my first trip to Israel. He was interviewing a Chabad Lubavitcher Rebbe in Jerusalem at the Temple Mount in the Kotel Plaza. And when I was there in 95, there was a giant yellow sign hanging on the Jewish quarter that said, Lakuna Haviat HaMashiach, prepare for the coming of Messiah. So Peter Jennings asked this guy, so what are you looking for in terms of the Messiah? And the guy says, well, we're looking for someone who will rebuild the temple and bring peace for mankind. That's exactly what he said. I mean, I'm sort of like, okay, sometimes you wonder when these secular people are saying things, are they trolling us? They know what we believe, and they're just trying to get us excited and amped up and hyped up. But this is what they think. Mm-hmm. I will also tell you, if you go to Lambert Dolphin's website, templemount.org, I think it's temple-mount.org, and look there, there's a guy named Hoysky. I think it's templemount.org/Hoysky. And you will find there a Jewish architect who has taken the Dome of the Rock, which is 8-sided, and turned it into, because it was built on an 8-sided Byzantine church, but that's irrelevant for right now, turn it into an 8-sided house of all faiths. I wish I had the picture for you here. It's at templemount.org. It's fascinating, and I don't know if it's got any traction. I don't know if the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine is getting any traction. I'm just telling you is all of these things seem to be coming up at the same time. And so when you look at this, it's very interesting. They have an Islamic wing, Christian wing, a Jewish wing, and a Buddhist wing. And then in between, for the other 4, they have Salafi, which is the Islamic mysticism. They have Christian mysticism. They have Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, and then they have mysticism for the Buddhist and Hindu people. And this is one proposal that, well, we will build this house of all faiths, and we will be able to come because it says in the Bible that my house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. So this is what an architect thinks is going to happen.
That's interesting. So let me ask you, looking at a few questions I have for you, actually.
Sure.
Revelation chapter 11, you have the temple that is built. John's given the dimensions, and the outside is given to the Gentiles.
How
would you
is given over
interpret
to the Gentiles. There's a couple ways of interpreting that. I think it means that there's an outer court given over to the Gentiles, which I believe. I'm just looking at when I see a lot of the Jewish writings and that type of thing, and I even see like this new Sanhedrin thing that they've built in the Western Wall tunnels, or this synagogue or whatever that has like 71 seats in it. They talk about the house of prayer for all nations, so that it's sort of an ecumenical thing. Mm-hmm. And we see the ecumenical thing. In October, I just posted this on my Facebook page today, they're doing the Abrahamic Symphony, the Unity of Three.
4-3.
To announce to celebrate the opening of the Abrahamic House of Faith. Wow. Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi. That's nearing completion. It's supposed to open in October. I've seen some things in some of the United Arab Emirates publications like The National talking about this, that this is a great thing and this is what we're trying to accomplish, and we're trying to accomplish unity and peace and harmony and that type of thing. And it goes along with the Abraham Accords, the one article from either late July or early August said in the UAE paper called The National. So I just tell you, it's like there's so much stuff going on in this space that it's incredible. So I do think that the temple is there. And remember, it talks about the holy place. Mm-hmm. And so this is a holy place that's desecrated. And so, when people say, well, it's an Islamic Antichrist, the reaction has always been, well, no good Muslim would go into the temple and declare himself to be above all that is called God. And I'm like, who said he was a good Muslim?
Yeah.
Who said he was a good anybody? If he's Jewish or Islamic or Christian or whatever, he's not a good guy because he's claiming he's above everybody.
This guy's full of Satan. Hey,
right.
So a couple things to throw out there. So I find this interesting, and I've seen it and read these same comments with, what are you looking for in the Messiah? Well, going to bring peace to the world and build the temple. And when you look at the alliance that Israel will make with Antichrist, going to enter into this agreement, what's happened with Israel, when you go all the way back to their past, whether it be ancient Israel or ancient Judah, they align themselves, instead of aligning themselves with the Lord, they look to the foreign nations. They look to Egypt, they look to Assyria, they look to these different kings for their peace. And what's happening now today is the same thing. The time will come when they will look to Yeshua. We know how it ends. But it's very interesting how this dynamic is there. And John, you and I both experience this when we see our Israeli friends. They are looking for peace at any cost. They
really are.
They just want to have peace. They're tired of having rockets shot at them. They're tired of always living under that thing. And it's a very real experience. They experience it. None of the rest of us experience it. They do, but it's the same cultural dynamic from ancient Israel that has taken place throughout Israel's history, and it's happening now. Do you believe?
So You want to ask me about where the temple is?
Yeah, I was right where I was going to go.
I see. I had a premonition. Listen, I believe the temple was on the Temple Mount. There's a number of reasons for that. All of the scholarly, conservative, evangelical archaeology experts Joel Kramer, Scott Stripling, Randall Price, say there's no question but that it was on the Temple Mount. Now, people say, well, this was a fortress or a garrison, but there's no evidence that there was a fortress or garrison for the Roman soldiers to live in that was built of that size. And it's like 200 years later. It was the first one that's ever been known of that type. And I also think that the Fortress Antonio there to the north, we see it in the pictures, but I think it might have been actually bigger. I think there's some evidence developing now that it was bigger than it is. And look, they haven't excavated everything. So there's a couple other things I will say that lead me to this. One is its location. So the one of the arguments is that, well, it had to be down in the city of David because that's where the Gihon spring was, and it needed living water for the temple worship. But I don't know. I'm looking through the Bible, and I may be missing it, so I apologize if I am. But they needed a lot of water, and the Gihon spring would not have had enough water. And there's a very good channel out there called Israel My Channel, where the guy has done these 3-dimensional drawings and everything, and he's the Temple Mount person. And if you want to see that, go look at his renderings of Jerusalem at that time, because if it was in the city of David, it would have to be so high up, like yards and yards higher than what it is now. And there's no evidence of any like old stones or anything down there in the city of David. So I don't know what motivates the people who hold that. I mean, they're good people, but I sometimes think that, well, if we get the Temple Mount is such a hot button issue, if we can move it someplace to the south, 200 yards to the south or whatever, then we solved the Temple Mount problem. But you haven't solved anything because it's an Arab village. So first of all, I just don't think it works architecturally. In fact, when you go, have you been to the Herodian?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you stand on top of the Herodian and you look to the west towards Hebron, and you see the mountain range. And the mountain range, Hebron is like the highest place. And that's one of the water sources for the temple. And it goes downhill, it goes down to Bethlehem, which is really, it's not, you think of the fields and it's like, oh, it's like on the side of a hill. And then it goes down further. And from Hebron, you can see the Mount of Olives, but you can't see the Temple Mount because the Mount of Olives is higher than the Temple Mount, which is kind of an interesting thing because God dwelt among his people. He wasn't like the highest thing. He was among his people, but symbolically. But the water goes downhill. And in fact, when we went down to Hebron with Joel Kramer, he was pointing out a number of places down. He goes, oh, yeah, there's remnants of the aqueducts that brought water from Hebron to Bethlehem and then on to the Temple Mount. And they used a very ingenious system in the way they did this. There's also been discovered, I think it's 43 or 47 giant cisterns underneath the Temple Mount that they've discovered so far.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some. I've seen some.
Right.
Last time I was there, tons of water.
Right. And they're not in the city of David, and they're at, around, or under the Temple Mount. And then there's a recent, I have two more things I wanted to say. There's the recent finding of this processional road from the Pool of Siloam. This is a very big deal. I mean, I think Pompeo was there, or Friedman, or somebody was there to cut the ribbon. And it goes from the Pool of Siloam, goes up about 700 meters up the hill, and it would have been lined with shops back in those days. And it ends at the Temple Mount, doesn't end in the city of David. And everybody says this is the processional road. So that's another thing. And then there's been some evidence of things found on the Temple Mount. There's been these seals, these bulla, different ones identifying people with Hezekiah and others. And then I was down in Lynchburg, Virginia last fall, and I spoke at Liberty University Law School Chapel. And Randall Price, who I've known for a long time, he came over to listen to what I had to say and hopefully not critique it too badly. But so after we were done, we went over to the museum that they have there at the Liberty University Library. And it's a collection of artifacts from Israel, biblical archaeological artifacts. And it's mostly Randall's collection. And he pointed out two things to me. One was a piece of wood. And that piece of wood, there's an article back in 2013 or 2014 in Biblioarchaeological Review next to, you know, where the sealed up gate is, the Eastern Golden Gate. And they're trying to turn that into mosque, but right next to it, like under a tarp, are these like 8 beams. Well, the Al-Aqsa mosque was, the roof collapsed back in an earthquake back several decades ago. And they had these old beams and they didn't want to reuse them, but they didn't want to throw them away. So they put them over there by the Golden Gate under a tarp. And while the Muslims were sort of not paying attention, the Jewish archaeologists got samples from them, and Randall has a piece of one of them. And they dated them, and 7 of the 8 beams were dated 2,000 years old to the time of Herod's temple, the second temple. And one of them was dated 3,000 years to the time of Solomon's temple. And they are convinced that those beams were part of the first and second temples.
That'd be as in the cedars of Lebanon.
They are cedars from Lebanon, by the way. So very fascinating. And then Randall also showed me a piece, this white marble piece. And long story about how he got it. He wanted to go out along the Eastern Gate to just look and see what he could find. But the guards wouldn't let him leave the city, the old city. And they said, I do this all the time. They said, you're not allowed to leave today. You have to stay inside. And then he sees these Muslim guys coming down through the old city carrying a body in a funeral procession. They're going to bury him in the Muslim cemetery out there. So he joins the funeral procession and goes out there. And as they're digging it, they hit this rock and he takes it and looks at it, and it's this carved limestone. And he took it to the head of the Antiquities Authority, and he said, and I think it was a she. She said, "Where did you get this, Randall?" And he said, "Well, they dug it up in that cemetery there." Because when the Romans destroyed the temple, they pushed everything to the east. So it would have been gone over the wall down into that valley there where the Muslim cemetery is now, along the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. And she said, "Randall, I'm pretty sure that you are holding in your hands the only piece we have ever found of the second temple. And that's imported limestone. It's carved. It's color unique." And he says, she goes, "Well, you keep it, because if I said where it was found, there would be a riot. So I can't keep it." So it's in the museum there at Liberty University.
That is.
And
cool.
So I don't know if I should tell that story, but
well, you just did. It's too late now. You just did, and it was live. That is.
So just back this up and erase it. No, I'm just kidding.
Too late.
I've told it before. It's very fat. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at this. Getting chills looking at this.
That is so. I've never heard that.
They've not found anything like that down in the old city of David. Okay, and they're excavating there in the city of David, and they found the processional way, and they found some other stuff, but they haven't found any evidence of the temple. So I, respect the people that have tried to work this out. And I know it's very controversial. And when I say that I think the Temple Mount is the Temple Mount, boy, I get some pretty nasty emails and comments, but that's okay, because I'm not building the thing anyway. So it's not on my to-do list, but I know that something is coming.
That's great. Just my 2 cents worth. I want to get to a couple questions before we have a few more minutes, right? Okay. So, I was recently at that Pilgrim Road down by the Pool of Siloam, Shalach, and you look at that road. It goes all the way up to the Temple Mount. You're going all the way up to the southern steps, as you know. Why would you have these steps going all the way up there if the temple was in the city of David? For anybody who's been to Israel before, you can picture the city of David. There's some people that just emailed me relentlessly because I placed the temple up on the Temple Mount too. And I said, listen, have you ever been to Israel? Listen, go to Israel, visit the city of David, and you tell me how that temple could have even fit in the city of David. And you look at it is amazing, all of the things that have been discovered in the city of David. And I mean, rooms and houses and even places of worship, but not a temple.
Right. Nothing related to the magnificent temple that was there.
It wouldn't even fit in the city of David.
Well, it would have had to been on a built-up place that was so high that it would make it impractical to have the water source to get up there. So go look at Israel, my channel, YouTube channel. He's got a number of videos on it. And I find them personally very compelling. And again, I say, I'm not building the thing. Other people are building it. And they're going to decide. And I don't know. I mean, you could probably count Jewish people that might think that that's not the Temple Mount on one hand, probably.
Probably. I asked, so one of my viewers challenged me, he said, why don't you ask some Israeli architects while you were there next time? So you know what I did? And all of them said the same thing. There's no way. And we know how these things were started and it's really got traction in America, in Western culture, but that's not from Israelis. And then I want to reiterate this on Israel, my channel, fantastic YouTube channel. Simple, easy to understand, outstanding illustrations.
Graphics, unbelievable.
I've never met the guy who does it. He does a phenomenal job, just a phenomenal job of explaining the graphics, just over the top. So I would just reiterate what John just said. So
we know that this temple's coming, and so now we have maybe there's a peace plan. We have the Abraham Accords. We have this Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine thing. We have Mohammed bin Salman. We have Jared Kushner with his Arab Accords Peace Institute, and he's gotten a few $1 billion from Mohammed bin Salman and the United Arab Emirates and this sort of hedge fund that he's running. And I mean, did you see the interview with him the other day where he said he thinks that either his generation or his children's generation will be the one that they live forever?
Yes. So I mean, you look okay. So this is the Yuval Noah Harari stuff, the Klaus Schwab stuff. All of Klaus Schwab's ready to die anyways. But you look at this and you think, okay, this is Satan in the Garden of Eden, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. God knows when you eat of that fruit, you surely won't die. You just know you'll be like him, like a God, which is the exact thing that is being told right now. And when you start looking at the mark of the beast and you start seeing, okay, what's going to happen to people who receive the mark of the beast, there's no turning back. And you start to see, well, it's this worship, I'm going to live forever. There is no such thing as God. I am God. I mean, so many things. Then we can get into DNA, which I don't want to because I don't want to get censored at this moment. But it's the conversations that are out there in the secular world, are just amazing when you look at Bible prophecy.
Yeah, new article I was just reading. So, our computers are fairly rudimentary, ones and zeros right now, but there's developing, I think, Foreign Affairs, published by the Council on Foreign Relations, has a big article about, hey, artificial intelligence isn't perfect, but quantum computing is really scary. And they're making a lot of inroads and developing in that area. And it's like, I'm just telling you is that it could get very weird here in this world very quickly.
Real soon, real fast.
And then I think every day I say at least once a day, I'm glad I'm 68 because I don't know what's coming. I'm just telling you, this is, wow.
It's going to happen fast.
Crazy time.
It's going to happen fast.
Yeah, so it does happen fast. And so we talked about, so in 3 years, look where we've come.
Yeah.
In terms of the timeline and everything. So, we used to do these updates. I used to do them in, like 10, 15 minutes, then do some other stuff. Now it's like 2, 3, 4 hours. You're doing them every day. I'm doing a couple a week. I'm doing radio programs all the time. So amazing. it's an amazing time.
I used to do them once a year, every New Year's Eve.
I remember that. I think I was at one of them once. Yeah.
Yeah, I would save my material all year long for the coming New Year's Eve. Hey,
and you'd have 1.5 or 2 hours, and you would get it done.
Yeah. Daniel chapter 9, man, we went way over, but Daniel chapter 9, you have the confirmation of the covenant. So when you see this covenant that is confirmed with the many, what's your interpretation of confirmed? Do you believe it's a covenant that's already there that's confirmed? It means made strong. Do you think it's something new?
I think I've kind of gone around with different views. The word there is gabar, which means strengthened. So it sort of implies that there's something that was there, but it also has a sense of force. So I'm not so sure. I was thinking of this when Obama was doing things with the Jerusalem resolution at the UN Security Council back in 2016. After the 2016 election, they had that, I think, 1224 resolution that the U.S. did not veto for the first time. And Samantha Powers did something, she made this speech. And so then, I was sort of thinking, again, because the scripture unfolds in a real world, it doesn't unfold in a vacuum. And so I think when it unfolds, we'll have a better understanding of it. But it was maybe it means it's forced on them. It's like it's shoved down their throats. You're going to do this whether you like it or not. And that could also be how that's interpreted. But certainly it seems to be something that's confirmed. And I don't know if it's a peace agreement. The Antichrist, I think, will try to mimic the ministry of Christ. So he's going to make some kind of covenant. But it may be something that sort of mimics the Abrahamic covenant. And now we have this Abrahamic house.
How about an Abrahamic accord?
Right.
When you look at it, it's just because Satan, he is a copycat. He's not an originator. Right. Do you believe Isaiah 28 is future and speaking of that same covenant where Isaiah 28 says, at the time when Jerusalem has these wicked leaders, they enter into this agreement with Sheol, and God says,
and Sheol, yeah.
And I will.
Yeah, I kind of think that's related.
I do too. It's often passed over, but it's to avoid the scourge. I talked with Bill Salas about that. What's that mean to avoid the scourge? So if you look at what's the purpose of the Daniel chapter 9 covenant, if Isaiah 28 is a reference to the same thing, Israel is attempting to avoid something by entering into the covenant. So it's all very interesting.
I have friends there, and I get kind of emotional. I see these people like the up there in the north when the Orthodox, or some of the sects of the Orthodox, had that thing where the people got killed in the stampede last year. And they're there singing and they're longing for the Messiah. And so I had this emotion, it really tugs on me. And it's sort of how do we get them to the truth? That should be our goal. And I don't know that I have the answer to that. I know that it will be a great work of God when it does happen.
It will happen. It's going to be great. John, we went way over, and I don't even have time to get to any questions. We've already been on an hour. I'll just throw out this one question came up earlier, so this is the only one we got time for, is why is New York not Babylon? I know what my thinking is, but what's your thinking on it?
Well, I think, first of all, the description is something in the desert. So New York's not, it certainly is a moral desert, and increasingly so. But I'm not sure that it rules over the kings of the earth. So, it does have the UN there, but I just don't know that it meets that other criterion.
Yeah. So it was great talking with you today. I really want to ask you more about Antichrist when he comes on the scene, because I have a lot of things I have in my head, and there's not many guys that will understand where I'm coming from, but I know you would, because I have a different. I'm pre-trib.
Right. But I know you're struggling with, or you're looking at some other options.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. No, I'm pre-trib, but the problem is I don't take a pre-trib traditional view on how things unfold.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah. And so I look at it and I go, wait a minute, the Bible, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, when you look at that, it's a time of peace. It's a time where people are building and selling and planting and harvesting, according to Luke 17. You know, and so I place things different than a typical pre-trib person does. And although I'm still pre-trib. But I'd like to talk to you about that online.
Sure.
I think it'd be a great
Love
conversation, amongst a few other things. It'd be fun. Thank you for joining me today again. To get a hold of John, you can check it out in the YouTube description you see there. And again, I want to reiterate a couple of things. Go to Israel, my channel. You'll be totally blessed by that YouTube channel. We mentioned the other day Joel Kramer. Check out his YouTubes, as he's an archaeologist in Israel. And also Randall Price was mentioned several times today. Anything by Randall Price is outstanding. So I would say, get your hands on those things. And please don't forget to like and share this video. I really appreciate it. And anything you can do to support us at Hope for Our Times helps us, because we only do it by your donations. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. John, thank you. Can't wait to see you again.
God
Bye,
bless.
everyone.